When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she is standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. And when the broken-hearted people living in the world agree, there will be an answer, let it be. They may be parted, there is still a chance that they will see. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, yeah, let it be. If there will be an answer, let it be. Yeah, let it be. Let it be, yeah, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be.
Well, it looked like, yes, it did. Yes, it did. Austin was going to come up and help the aging preacher up in the front. It's so good. You know, what's really nice is the fact that at 11:11 we try to start. 11, 11, 12, 11, 13, we try to start. I'm back here getting the microphone on, and I'm thinking there are 4 or 5 announcements I need to make before we begin our worship, and Brad starts up with the music, which I think is amazing because it's automatic now. So when it comes time that my sermon is just going too long, Brad will step up and we'll just start the music. And that's a good thing. So we're glad that you all are here this morning. This is the first Sunday of Advent. It's the Sunday after Thanksgiving. Folks are traveling around still this weekend, but it's also the first Sunday of Advent. And we don't talk a lot about liturgical seasons in here, but there's an interesting thing about Advent, about liturgical seasons in general. They actually originated, they were actually rooted in some of the earliest sort of more earthy celebrations or pagan celebrations. They were more a part of some of the cultural traditions where they arose that were indigenous to the people. So the Christmas tree, for example, came out of Celtic and Germanic traditions, but eventually was adopted in the Christian faith. And the same's true for Advent, which comes at a time when the seasons begin to turn dark, when we are entering at the middle to the end of fall and moving into the period of darkness and into a period of waiting, of anticipation. So Advent, by the church's reckoning, gives us this chance to go inward and to wait and to be present. Of course, we realize we're waiting towards the birth of Jesus, the birth of God incarnate into our world. But we typically forget about this period. We kind of skip right over because we're thinking about, well, it's already, Black Friday Sunday, Saturday, right? And it's, it's going to just keep on going. It's Black Saturday and next week too. And so we're sort of focused on what Christmas is really all about, and that's making sure we nail the present. I love the Walmart ad that I saw last night. Which said something to I forgot who it is, the comedian that's up there with these two people, but they keep saying, you want to win this Christmas. And I've never heard that idea until this new campaign. You want to win, don't lose out. You want to win. And I'm thinking, well, who do you step on to do that, on Black Friday? So we've kind of lose a little track. But it's good because it's also good to be connected to what's happening to us outside in nature, environmentally, to be present with the way in which things are turning. It's good to be present with that and to realize that all of it goes hand in hand as we come into this season. So it's good to have you here for the first Sunday of Advent. In just a minute, I'm going to invite you to stand up and sing. We have a few announcements, but I'll make them at the very end at this point. But one thing I do want to mention, someone has approached me this morning and said that for the next 4 weeks, because it's a season of Advent, as you know, the dollar bills that go in the basket, the dollar bills you put in here go towards our direct sort of missional outreach for hunger and for immediate needs that present themselves day to day here at the church. The rest of it goes into budgeting, which can go to mission and programming and staff and all sorts of things. But the dollar bills go specifically towards those issues, hunger and unsheltered and just immediate needs. So this donor has said that they will double whatever gets put in here for the next 4 weeks. So just keep that in mind as I know the person personally, and I would love to see them empty their pockets. So just kidding. So that lets you know all about that. We're glad that you're here. We're going to begin our worship. Let's stand and sing. This is a classic anthem for Advent season, but we do it with just a little bit of a twist. Hang on.
With us. Oh come, Emmanuel, and ransom captivity Israel that mourns in lonely exile until the Son of God appear. Rejoice. Shall come to you. shall come to you. Oh, he's where I am. One more chorus. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to you. Oh, Israel. Nice singing. Hey, take a moment and offer each other signs of peace, would you please?
I want to preface this just a moment here, just quickly to let you know that instead of doing the real Christmas, well, the real Christmas story is the theme that we're doing throughout the church, the real Christmas story versus the real Christmas story. This particular movie theme, if you get the devotionals, which have been mailed to all the members of the church, we have them in the Welcome Center as well, and they're all about the Advent season and daily devotionals, but they're centered around 4 films that we'll be sort of focused on as a whole church that are part of the Christmas season. And the first one is, of course, A Miracle on 34th Street. And the more I worked on my message, the more it didn't really fit what I want to share with you. So I'm venturing apart a little ways, but staying sort of somewhat on the path. The trail's over here, and I'm cross-cutting through the briar and the brush up above while the rest of the church is on the trail. And so I hope you'll understand that when you see the clip that I chose.
y'all please join in and sing? I think the lyrics are printed in your bulletins. When you get the hang of it, chime in. Love, hear my voice through the silence and the noise. Peace is welcome in, it's welcome in. Love, fill my heart, close where I'm apart. Peace is welcome in, it's welcome in. Love, be my guide, even as I close my eyes. Love, be here now, be here now. Love, see my words, so that everyone is heard. Love, be here now, be here now. Love, hear my voice through the silence and the noise. Peace is welcome in, it's welcome in. Love is all around, it's all around.
In our Kairos time, this is our time when we allow our soul to catch up with our body. And we allow the gifts that silence can offer up. So I invite you now to close your eyes, to get comfortable, to relax and simply be. There was a reason that the word pneuma, breath, means spirit. I invite you now just to pay attention to your breath. Begin to notice this gentle movement flowing into your body and flowing out once more. Without attachment, without judgment, allow your thoughts and feelings just to come and to go. Attend to the movement of your breath and trust that the Spirit's deep work within your heart and soul is emerging in ways that we cannot manufacture, but only trust. Holy One, in this season of light and anticipation, remind us once again that our human story and the divine story were never separate. They were always one. But in this season, we are reminded anew that God is with us. The holy, the divine is not out there, not against us, but right here in the vulnerable and fragile stuff of life. There is a crack in everything. But that's how the light gets in. Source of life, Holy One, with centered hearts upon your life-giving love, enable us to live out this reality in the world we share with others. In the name of the one in whom we live and move and have our being. Amen.
You read yours after. Okay. We have two readings this morning, and normally during the season of Advent we have an Old Testament reading, we have a New Testament reading. The Old Testament reading, for reasons I'll mention in a minute, tend to be Isaiah, or Lamentations, or Psalms, and there's a reason for that because it is Advent season. But one of our members has been part of this community for a long, long, long time. Many of you know him. Many of you have seen him but don't really know him as well. He's an amazing artist visually, but also a person of words that are quite inspiring. And he shared a couple of poems with me just innocently last week. And as things tend to happen in here, one of the poems fit perfectly. So I'm going to invite Angela Williams to come up here and to share one of his poems that I think fits really well with the whole idea of lamentation.
Good morning. The poem that I've been blessed to share with you is it was written Christmas Day, 1991. It was the first Christmas that I spent alone. It goes like this. Staring out my window, feeling quite alone. It's strange how loneliness can share a person's home. I turn and look inside my space, and there among the gloom, the leaves of all my plants seem to dance around the room. A leaf brushed against my cheek, it felt just like a kiss. I questioned my conscious senses, what brand of madness is this? My room filled with whispers which united in a song. Their lyrics told me softly, you will never be alone. Your spirit is eternal, heaven is your home. The creaturehood is your family, no matter where you roam. Thank you.
The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. John 1:1-9. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the light was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. There was a man sent from God, whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light, the true light, which enlightens everyone, which was coming into the world.
From the fountain of forgiveness.
It's also nice to have Hillary Hummel with us on the harp today. We're also glad to have her. And we're hopeful to have her back over the next couple of Sundays for Advent, so we'll get to hear some more lovely harp music as well. I just want to say a couple of things before I give this first illustration, because it's such a beautiful song, and I don't know if it moves you in the way it moves me, but it's such a perfect song for Advent. Dante, when he wrote the Inferno, was Lorena McKinnett was actually writing this as she was outside of Marrakesh, and she was on a train, and she was dealing with just a variety of people on the train in every socioeconomic status. And she was reading Dante's Inferno at the same time. And it so inspired her to just begin to interact with such diversity of people that she found herself empathizing deeply with the suffering and the challenges, and then wrote this on the train. It's a good song for Advent because I think Advent is that season when we are invited to wait. When we're invited to be a part of how things are happening around us. Things are moving into a dormant state. Things are moving into an inner state, a time of reflection. But in addition to the seasonal things that are changing, it's also the church's beginning season. It's the first season of our liturgical season. And I don't know if this is moving in and out. It might be, so I'll just take a handheld, and that might work better. But as a period of deep reflection and thinking of the beginning of things, it's the perfect time to sort of sit with things, to sort of sit with darkness, which is not easy, which is why sometimes I think as soon as Advent rolls around, we find ourselves just leaping towards the Christmas season, towards getting to the end and thinking about, making sure that we have all the gifts and that all the kids are smiling and that we're celebrating and enjoying the lights. It's a season of joy. But there's something about Advent that we miss out on when we're allowed to sit. And I think it's part of it's a symptomatic of our sort of human reality anyway. It's hard for us sometimes to separate our experiences from our thinking or our fears or our beliefs. And when we get to Advent especially, I think it's all the more apparent. There's this wonderful kids song that I learned years ago at a camp, and I'm going to do, originally it's a German song. I'm just going to do the first verse of it. And I think it becomes an interesting metaphor for where we find ourselves today. It's called Dunderbeck's Machine. Anyone know this? No? Okay. Yes, some do. I'll do it German accent first, and then I'll move out of there, because that's how I found it. Oh, there was a good old German man. His name was Dunderbeck. He was very fond of poodle dogs and sauerkraut and speck. He had a great big, my wife right now would be up here just saying, sit down. He had a great big butcher shop, the nicest ever seen. He got him out of patent boys to make sausages by steam. Oh, Mr. Dunderbeck, dear old Mr. Dunderbeck, how could you be so mean to ever have invented the sausage meat machine? Then pussycats and long-tailed rats, no more they will be seen, 'cause you grind them up to sausage meat in Dunderbeck's machine. Many of you know how the story ends. It ends with Mr. Dunderbeck. But the sausage tastes a whole lot better for some reason. We won't go there. I think it's an interesting metaphor, and I want to kind of think about it. I think when we come to this season, we sort of have a Dunderbeck's machine. It's the way we tend to live our lives out. We tend to live our lives by sort of grabbing all of the abstractions that we sort of pull, meanings from here and there, beliefs from here and there, all of them sort of random, and then they all get tied up in our experiences and our emotional issues and our scripts and our histories. And then before you know it, it's the way in which we're interpreting things. And we have a hard time separating fact from fiction. We have a hard time separating embellishment from what really happened from history. And that's all the more true at this time of year. It just gets really mixed up. It's like Dunderbeck's machine. I mean, how many of you, maybe it would be too embarrassing, but if we did a show of hands of who in here has not somehow been related to someone or yourself particularly personally involved in some aspect of a Christmas pageant at some time in your life? Most of us have. Or we've known someone who's been a shepherd, a wise man, a sheep even, a goat, or a camel, or in some of those obscure community ones where they just happen to have this animal, a lobster. They all end up. And maybe somebody had the good fortune to think in terms of, oh, yes, they celebrated all this time. They still talk about it all these years later. Their son's 40, but he was the baby Jesus in the pageant years ago. We've all had that experience. But it's a perfect example of a Dunderbeck's machine. Because when you look at the nativity scene, everything that's there isn't really all in the stories themselves. They somehow end up there. And if you look at each individual story, which I encourage you to go back, find your Bible somewhere, pull it off the shelf, dust it off, open it up, look at Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You don't even need to look at John because there's no nativity story in there whatsoever. There's no birth narrative. But if you look at the other three, you'll find that they're completely different. And there's a reason for that. They were written at different times. So you'll find Mark's narrative, which is the first one, written about the 7th century. And you'll find Matthew's narrative, which will be different, written about 10 years or so after that. And then Luke's, which was written almost near the first century. I said 10th century. I meant 70 A.D. and 80 A.D. But then you'll find Luke's, who was also the author, supposedly, of Acts. Most of the folks think in those terms, and most of the scholars think that. But you'll look at his gospel, and it's completely different in terms of how it describes the birth narrative. Now, each of these begins to adapt what the other had prior to it, and they make changes. If you get to Matthew has Jesus and the family in Bethlehem already, but they somehow are in Nazareth already, but they have to get back to Bethlehem, because that's where the Markan story has Jesus, and it's the familiar tradition. So you see, then what Matthew adds is the whole thing of the wise men, but they're not in the other two narratives. And yet somehow they all end up in the nativity scene. Camels. There are no camels in the story. There's a donkey. Why is the donkey there? Because Mary. But it's in none of the stories. First time it appears is around 145 A.D. when it's in this apocryphal gospel called the Gospel of James. And it shows up. He saddled a donkey and put Mary on there. It's part of a tradition, but it's not part of the canonical tradition. Now, the only reason why I bring all of this up is because we have a tendency to want to sort of sweeten things up and try to make sense of everything, so we tend to try to assimilate meaning on our own as a people. Sometimes it happens through cultural norms or pressures, just as the canonical Bible that we have came through a series of pressures between different groups of people who vied for their particular version of which stories should be included. So that when you finally come 2,000 years later and we're looking at the stories here, there's been a lot of changes. You could go back and look at your own history and think of how many times the stories are told about things that happened to you and how many different ways they're told. And I have my brother here, and if I was to tell you our family stories, he would probably want to stand up and say, that's not as I remember it, especially if they're about him. So we tell stories and we adapt them, we embellish them, we kind of form them to fit where we are emotionally and where we are in terms of our wishes or desires. It's like a Dunderbeck's machine. Do we do that anywhere else? I think that's the thing that I really want us to think about is, do we do that anywhere else? We can say how we've done that, and most of you are probably familiar with this whole idea of how scriptures have been embellished over time and just what is the historical context of Scripture and not. Do we do that today? Someone came in early this morning and shared with me an incident where, as the band was practicing, some folks were asked to leave, to move out, to go because the band was practicing. Well, that person didn't realize that we've made arrangements for folks to be in here and they can hang around. But the way in which they said it was very direct, almost judgmental. And the way in which it was received was, of course, how it was presented. Now, where does that conflict go from that point? Typically, it's going to go where each of those individuals came to that point with, what they brought to that point. It's going to come with their biases, with their anxieties, with their fears, with their prejudices, and that's where it will continue. So what happened in Ferguson? How clear is that story? And then when you look at the dialogue online and you start seeing everyone standing on their point because they have experienced it personally and they heard personally all the different accounts of what had happened, in spite of the fact that there are dozens of different accounts of what happened. But everyone else also has a personal experience of what it's meant to be either abused or experienced prejudice, or certainly defended themselves against ever having done that to anyone. But that's where it stops, because everybody brings Dunderbeck's machine to that point. And we're not really sure what went into it, because we never really bother to look at the ingredients. Well, now, if you're a good sausage eater, you think you don't want to know the ingredients. I don't really want to think about it. Tastes pretty good the way it is. I like my life just fine. I don't want to think about what went into this. I don't want to go back and look at history and see what was put into this machine. I like it the way it is. Bring on Christmas. That's the problem with Dunderbeck's machine. It's not easy to take it apart. It's not easy to face ugly things, or to even to begin thinking that we could be a part of any of that, even if remotely. But I think that's what Advent invites us to do. Personally, any number of us can think of what it has meant to be in a dark place, what it has meant to be in that place of Dante's prayer or Angelo's poem, what it has meant to be in a place where it felt like the only friend you had, the only familiar face you had, was loneliness or isolation or despair. Probably most of us can identify with that. It goes into the machine too. But the reality is that we're part of culture, we're part of our communities, we're part of our histories, we're part of our extended histories. And when we look at what Jesus brought to the community, what he brought to his time was a challenge to turn our realities upside down, to turn those realities upside down in a way that says, let's take it apart. Now, of course, being prophetic, as he was, it was a rather abrupt turning things upside down. It was a rather abrupt a voice. But sometimes that's what's needed. Sometimes a prophetic voice is what's needed to open us up a little bit, to move us beyond. I was sharing with the person that I was sharing with this morning just the sort of the background. I wish the other party had been here, because I think it could have been a really wonderful moment to just sense the baggage that had been brought to that moment, and then suddenly realizing, well, maybe I was too judgmental on both sides. I do it every single day. I make immediate judgments based on whatever's gone into that machine. And I have to stop myself. I have to be intentional. When you look at all the gospel narratives, they're all pretty sweet in terms of that biblical story of Jesus' birth. And we've made that even sweeter with all of our beautiful pageants. When you come to John's gospel, it's a different story. John's gospel was written after the beginning of the first century. The falling of the temple, the destruction of the temple had already taken place 30 years before. So if you sort of think about your whole reality being destroyed, your whole social strata being uprooted from underneath you, if you just try to think about what that might feel like, maybe think about some of the Ukraine or some of the countries in Eastern Europe. Maybe give some thought to what's happened over the history of some countries in Africa. If you think about what it really means to have your culture totally uprooted, your reality totally upturned to where there's no security, there's no sense of connection, there's no sense that you have a place, then you're getting a little closer to what it might have felt like when John wrote his gospel. When the author wrote that gospel, it's a whole different approach. How do we connect to who Jesus was, given that kind of what we thought was going to happen didn't happen? How do we find the light in the darkness? And the beginning of John's gospel starts with this mystical plea, this mystical statement. In the beginning was God, was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was light, and the light came into the darkness. In the beginning, it's always been here, but it's not always easy to see. So this Advent, as we start thinking through the 4 weeks that lead us towards the birth and celebrating the incarnation of God in our midst, reminding us of the sacredness that is present with us because of God in Jesus. When we get to that place, as we get to that place, and as we move from week to week, I want to encourage you to do something. I want to encourage you to stay woke. Now, what I mean by that is not to wake up, not to awaken, but to stay woke. When my son and I went with my father and with his grandfather to Belize a long time ago, years and years ago, we were in a small remote place that had a history. It was close to the border of Guatemala, a history of incursions and conflicts. But it was a beautiful hiking spot and a little bit of a luxurious kind of remote primitive site. So they had these beautiful thatch huts, but it was all non-electricity. At night, it was pitch dark. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. The silence was seriously deafening. And I remember my son calling from across this little thatch hut as the sun finally set and it just got darker and darker and darker. And we were all laying there in this sense of totally being alone. If we breathed loud enough, we would know the other person was there, and he would call out, and it would sound like an echo. It was so loud, just from calling out, talking in his normal voice. And I remember sitting there with my fear. And I've had plenty of places where I felt afraid. I've had plenty of places where I've felt scared, almost near death. I've had plenty of those kinds of experiences, but this was one of those moments that felt so terrifying because of what I knew about the place, its history, and there we were in the midst of this total darkness. And I made the decision at that moment, I can continue to run from it or to simply be present with it. And the minute I decided to simply experience the darkness, to literally see what that felt like and experience it, the minute I began to let go of some of that fear. We don't have all the answers for all the problems. We don't have the answers for what's happening in Ferguson and for the conflicts and the residual stuff that's happening around the country. We don't have the answers for what happened in Egypt when Hosni Mubarak was acquitted this last weekend as the former president, when all of those young adult protesters were killed in the process of revolting against the Egyptian rule. We don't have the answer for any of those things. But they remain darkness. They remain a part of our human makeup. We don't have answers for poverty. What we can do is we can be present. What we can do is we can sit with the darkness a bit and just wait. The brightest light you will ever see is the light that begins to appear in the midst of the darkness. Amen. Beautiful. Thank you. So, in just a moment, we're going to stand and sing our final song, but I want to just bring a couple of quick things to your attention. As you noticed when you came in earlier, and as you noticed on the back, I want to make sure that you know we are having a Peter Mayer concert on December the 20th, Saturday evening, and we will also be featuring our own Elizabeth Wills as well, who will be joining us that evening. So it'll be a fun evening. There'll be some drumming, and you get the information on the back of your bulletin. You can get your tickets online, and you can also get them at the door. And if you're bringing several of you, family and such, then I think the tickets are discounted. So you can check with Mary Ann or the church office, and we'll let you know about that as well. There's a couple other quick things just to make note of. As I mentioned in the bulletin, the wishful thinking is off until January. The youth are selling hot chocolate if you're interested in that, to raise money for their choir and such. And then we have information about a dance. Would you want to just say something quick about that? Because I've all of a sudden forgotten all the details. And you can just come on up and do that before we sing.
New Horizons class is hosting the Tarrant Area Singles Methodist dinner dance this Friday here in Wesley Hall. It's a very nice dinner prepared by our resident gourmet chef, and it's $20. We're having the Moment of Truth band, and you can get your tickets today from me. And you don't have to be single. It's a singles dance, but we'd love to have all of you come. If you're married, bring your husband or wife or your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, and just come and have fun with us. So I've got tickets. Today's the last day to purchase them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, let's all stand and sing together. We're going to be singing this each week. It's a wonderful adaptation of an old hymn. So I invite you to join along as we sing.
Let's go. Love came down at Christmas. Love, a lovely love divine. Love was born at Christmas. Stars and angels gave the sign. All right. Love came down at Christmas. Love, a lovely love divine. Love was born at Christmas. Stars and angels gave the sign. Love shall be our token. Love be yours and love be mine. Love to God, to all of us. Love for plea and gift of sign. Sing some more. Love came down at Christmas. Love, a lovely love divine. Love was born at Christmas. Stars and angels gave the sign. Stars and angels gave the sign.
Well, take someone's hand next to you and let's have our blessing together. Let's pray. Holy One, in this season of joy, let us remember it is also a season of transformation, a season of going in and a season of trying to just look at the different parts and to see where we might find how the light separates things and brings clearer illumination to all of the pieces that make us up. May we find some comfort in that silence and reflection, but may in the process of seeing those different parts, may we realize we share that with one another, with stranger and friend alike. May we find the light together. Amen.